Hey guys, it's John back with another anti-guru video, and this one, well, was promised and we are delivering. So we are going to be looking at development in the greenbelt, and the title in this video is why you cannot just build in the greenbelt. This is a direct challenge to those gurus out there who are saying, yeah, fine, build in the greenbelt. These are the reasons why you can't. And we're going to be doing what we've done before with our land model and done before with development in the countryside, in looking at the greenbelt exemptions themselves and looking at why you can't and where you can. So join me on this video, but before you do, hit the like button, smash subscribe, comment, and get your bell on. Notify yourself of when the next video is coming out. This is our essentially Greenbelt Friday video. Looking forward to your comments on this one. So let's get straight into it. Greenbelt development is controlled to the highest degree possible, and it's controlled by this paragraph, para 145 of the NPPF. Now 145 contains within it 7 exemptions. What it basically says is development of new buildings is inappropriate in a greenbelt. Full stop, period. If you get a guru, if you get a land sourcer, if you get anyone saying, oh yeah, I reckon I can get planning permission for that, the first question you should be asking yourself, asking them, is what is their exemption in the greenbelt? What is their reason? Because they haven't given you a reason, it's one of these criteria, then the simple answer is no. They're not going to be getting planning permission for development in the greenbelt. We protect the greenbelt on basis of openness. Okay, the openness of the greenbelt. That means if you're making a building taller, making a building larger, in any way, you will affect openness, and that is the be all and end all. You can only get development in greenbelt with very, very special circumstances or one of these exemptions, and we're going to be going through these exemptions. Now, you know where the greenbelts are if you use Nimbus or Land Insight, and I've got Nimbus loaded right here. I've got the greenbelt layer switched on, and that's going to tell me where each and every one of those UK greenbelts are, and there are a few of them. So let's have a look at the one that's most common, the London Metropolitan Greenbelt. The original, the daddy, the one that came first. Now, the first thing to say about greenbelt development is not all things are in the greenbelt. You see, we have these islands here. These islands are settlements. Now, the settlements themselves are not inside the greenbelt. Greenbelt policy does not apply. So your first and last test, essentially, of if am I in the greenbelt, is to look at layers like this and say, well, actually, am I in one of these islands? If I'm in an island, I don't need to worry about para 145. If I'm outside of the island, then I absolutely have to. So I'm going to zoom on in to the county of Surrey, an area I know really, really well because it's my home county. It's where I was brought up. And the county of Surrey covers Guildford, Dorking, Redhill, Oxted. This is the area of the greenbelt that we're interested in, bits of Woking as well. So let's zoom on in, and I want to zoom on in to Guildford Borough, which is this area here. All very interesting because we've got little villages inside the greenbelt, and that's going to help us along quite a lot in our search. So our first exemption, Exemption A, is buildings used for agriculture or forestry. Now, this is relatively straightforward, isn't it? Let's turn that overlay off because we know where the greenbelt is, and let's whap on the aerial photography so you can see what's going on. Make this overlay disappear. Lovely, lovely. Right. So if you're a farm owner, if you're a forestry worker, let's go to any of these farms around Willey Green or Fairlands or Wood Street. If you're a farm owner in these areas, agricultural holding, you have the ability to build new buildings in the greenbelt because you have an exemption for that. And the whole point of this is, what is the exemption to green belt policy? What is the get out? Not can I do it? Can I exempt? And that, ladies and gents, is the important question to be asking always. Am I exempt? Is my development exempt? That's the first one. It's very simple. If you're using it for buildings for agriculture or forestry, you could be exempt. Exemption B is for outdoor sport, recreation, cemeteries, burial grounds, allotments, etc., as long as the facilities preserve openness. That's that openness test again. You're not allowed to make things any bigger, make the greenbelt look any more crowded. So, for example, this riding school here could be deemed as outdoor sport and recreation. They could increase the facilities per se by adding menages or low stables, as long as you didn't affect the openness of the greenbelt, the visual greenness of the belt. They would be expecting you to build on existing buildings or take existing built spaces, like, for example, this footing here, and build other buildings on top of existing footings. You've got some bits and pieces down here, for example, that could be an argument because it's associated with outdoor sport and recreation. The extent of that goes quite far. Burial grounds are also included, and so are allotments for obvious reasons. Exemption C is for extensions to buildings. Now, most householders fit within Exemption C. That is there to allow a homeowner to increase the size of their house, the disproportionate addition clause. Now, this, for example, would allow for 20%. Most policies stick themselves on 20 increase over the size of the original dwelling. Once you've hit 20%, then you are stuck. Now, the thing is, when it comes to greenbelt, your normal permitted development rights don't apply. Your extended permitted development rights don't, but your normal permitted development rights apply. So if we were going to go down to Broad Street here, any one of these houses, for example, could have an extension built onto them. But that extension will eat into the 20%. So when you finally use up PD, you will find yourself being able to extend no more because you've eaten up the 20%. This house, for example, on Broad Street here, has a garage and a conservatory attached to that garage. That has by far and away eaten in to their 20%. And it may very well be the case no more extensions can be allowed on that property inside the greenbelt because they have eaten in to that 20%. You find a lot of PD solutions for extensions to buildings, extensions to homes inside the greenbelt. And for everyone else, is this notional 20% limit is what most policies hanker after. The replacement building is in the same use and not larger than the one it replaced. So this is the like for like replacement solution. So let's go to, for example, a building all the way out here. Let's go for, say, this building here. Now this is a farm, obviously, and they've got a couple of buildings on the site there and there on the Flexford Road. If they wanted to rebuild this building inside the greenbelt, then they are allowed to do so by that exemption. But the building must be no larger than the building it replaces and must be the same use. Now that looks like a barn to me, and this might very well be a homestead style, small holding or similar. So that would have to go back to being an agricultural barn if you were to replace the building on a like for like basis. The like for like replacement clause is there for exactly that. Taking, a house like this and knocking bits down, replacing it, but as long as it's no larger than the building that was replaced. Really important that, because most people try and sneak additions onto the plan. And when you try and sneak additions onto the plan, you then have to make a justification under one of the other exemptions, extension or alteration, C, or you have to try for a very special circumstance if you have exceeded the provisions of C. Limited infilling in villages. So we're going to go to a village. We're going to whack our greenbelt layer back on. Just make sure we're still in the green. Yep, we are. We're going to go to Normandy this time round. So Normandy is a little village inside the greenbelt. Here it is. Look at it. Lovely. Limited infilling inside of the villages is there to deal with the missing tooth principle. So, for example, these houses on Glazier's Lane are very far apart. They are in a character where you have houses tightly drawn, and then you have these two very much wider plots here and here. One would argue that the replacement of this house with a couple of houses would ideally comprise limited infilling in a village, because essentially you're just making that house's plot work a bit more efficiently. What you're not doing is affecting openness, because it is part of an established building line. You would be affecting openness if you went to put the house all the way back here, and you would have a problem with the trees, but you would be pushing the building line back. You would definitely have an effect of openness if you would be putting houses back here, because there are no houses back there. You're way outside the building line. So limited infilling in villages could be seen as filling a gap like this, where you have an existing established frontage, and what you're doing is trying to make that frontage work a bit more efficiently in line with character. The character argument always applies, ladies and gentlemen. So you need to be very, very aware of that. As limited infilling in villages. Limited affordable housing providers set out in the development plan. So, all councils have to provide affordable housing. We know that. And so that, for example, would be a way for housing providers, affordable housing providers, to get new development inside of the greenbelt. So let's, for example, that is just one big mobile home park. So that is certainly not what we are looking for here. I'm looking for a development site that could be, capable. So let's take, for example, this lovely thing here. Down this lane, if an affordable housing provider was interested in this bit of industrial land, previously developed land, they could make their case for it as an exemption under the limited affordable housing provision. Now, limited does mean limited. We're not talking about building 100 homes. We're talking about building a small number of homes. Typically, you build very small pocket estates of less than 10. That would be limited affordable housing, but it has to be done through an affordable housing provider. You can't do it yourself unless you're an affordable housing provider. Then finally, we move on to Exemption 7, G, the one most people do, which is limited infilling or partial or complete redevelopment of previously developed land with a redundant and continuing use that would not have a greater impact on openness and not cause substantial harm to openness. Right. So, what does that mean? That is the provision that allows for you to take an existing building or buildings. So let's go up here to this cluster of industrial buildings up here. So that provision would allow for example, the redevelopment of this type of stock, knocking it down, rebuilding as housing. So we're going for a different use now. But the important thing is we're going for existing buildings, ladies and gentlemen. We're not going for buildings that are flattened, and we're not going for just green space, because you can't do that. There is no exemption there. In all of these exemptions, we're looking at previously developed land. We're not seeking to push that area of development further. So let's take this area here. Now, what this exemption would allow you to do is knock all this down, add up all of the floor space, all of the height, etc., and reutilize that in a better way, demonstrating that you don't have a greater effect on openness. Now, what that means is you'd be stuck to the bounds of where this development is. You wouldn't be able to push it off up into this green space here because that would have an effect on openness. And you'd be stuck with height. Single story for single story. But importantly, you would be able to rebuild as housing on a 100% footprint for a 100% footprint basis. Now, we've done this, and we've done it to great effect inside a greenbelt, and I'm going to show you that now. So if I zoom out, and I'm going to head down south, I'm going to head to the coast where there is a greenbelt. The greenbelt is there. And the greenbelt, part of the greenbelt I'm interested in is in Hordle. So I'm going to go to this site in Hordle. And I'm looking specifically for Sky End Lane. Oh, and it's built as well. Amazing. So, I wanted to show you this because this is an example of how you can do it. Let's just turn that greenbelt area off. So you can see this site here is wholly within the bounds of the greenbelt. Okay? Absolutely wholly within the bounds of the greenbelt. You can see a new building is being built here. Now, we're responsible for this. This was one of our planning applications inside of the greenbelt. On this land before, and let's see if the OS has been updated. It might not have. No, it has, absolutely. On this land before was a sequence of buildings, very much like these. There you go. There was some two-story, there was some single-story. And we got a prior approval in this case for the conversion of these buildings, two of them, to form two homes. That enabled us to then engage with the greenbelt policy. The greenbelt policy being redevelopment of buildings, either vacant or in continuing use, and, more importantly, replacement of buildings as long as they do not have a greater effect on openness, etc. So we're able to use two exemptions here. We replaced 4,500 square foot of homes with 4,500 square foot of homes, singular. This building is now under construction and is an active example of how to use greenbelt policy to proper effect. But here we absolutely utilised real policy, real exemption in order to get it to work. Now, the question I would ask, ladies and gentlemen, is if this site is most definitely in the greenbelt, what is going on with the site adjoining, which is also most definitely within the greenbelt? I think I'll leave that question open for others to answer. Fundamentally, though, that is how you do it. Use the rules. You have to go policy compliant. There is no fudging of this. There's no magic either. It is very much a case of a rules-based system. Use the rules to great effect. I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope that's been useful. If you have enjoyed it, hit like, hit subscribe. And get your bell on to get notified of the next. I'll see you on the next video. Have a great day.